Hi, everybody. I'm just doing another little journal video. Excuse me while I adjust. And today I wanted to talk about something, or at least reflect on something I've spent many years studying, at least many for me. I spent at least, must have been like, I think 6 years. Yeah, 6 years getting the degree. And not through any fault of my own. It's just the way it worked out for me is all. But before I begin, sorry, I wanted to share the avatar and the world I'm in. The avatar is by 1 second. It's Kai's Good Dragon by Kai Shin. And the world I'm in is literally called just the film studio. Created by, give me 1 second, Sparky Husky. So I'll see, maybe I might put the links to them in there. They're both public, so they're not that hard to find. But anyway, today's topic I wanted to talk about was philosophy and my experience in learning that. Particularly, excuse me, particularly when it comes to, like, what's the purpose of studying philosophy? Because the job or what you hear a lot today is like that's a useless degree to get. You ain't gonna find a job or anything like that. But I think that's kind of missing the point to philosophy. Yeah, if you want to go into philosophy for the work, you can find a better job. That's not the field to go into. But philosophy, I think, is still worth it if you are willing, if you want to really learn critical thinking, because that's very different than like how we normally think without that kind of training. You see, what philosophy does is it teaches you how to think through issues in a much deeper way. It's a skill that you have to uh, build up. Going into philosophy, like, there's a big learning curve. It's very difficult getting into it because you really don't understand a lot of the terminology, and the manner of thinking can be difficult for a lot of people, especially going into it, because you have to go point by point. You see, so and you can't skip steps. You can't just assume what the other person knows what you mean whenever you're going into these kinds of discussions, especially when you go into discussions about loaded terms like what is happiness, what is good, things like that. Uh, and I really struggled going into it when I first began. Uh, we started out with the Pre-Socratics. My undergrad is a bachelor's of philosophy, so this is just me going over that history, or my own personal experience with it. We started out with the Pre-Socratics, which, as the name implies, is those before Socrates. And those were mainly like materialists trying to explain, okay, why do things remain the same and why do they change? Or rather, what are things made of, rather, and why do things change? Because both are obvious truths, but why? What is things made of? What are things made of, and why do these things change? Why doesn't it just remain the same? So, and there are various different philosophies around that. Uh, A famous one would be with the Donatists, I believe, who developed an early theory of the atom, which was a very different concept than what we think of today when we say atom, the word atom. To them, they were little chunks of matter with different shapes, with some round and some jagged parts and things like that. And they could be all different sizes, from not being able to be seen to being as large as like a planet or something like that. And they say that things are what they are because the way the atoms arrange themselves make it up what it is. So things like that, but that's besides the point. Uh, but I really struggled with that. I think partly because we only really have fragmentary, like scraps of what they actually wrote. Uh, but also because of that learning curve I had, I didn't really get it initially. Then it finally started to click when we got up to Socrates. Now, with Socrates, we don't actually have anything that he wrote himself because, well, he didn't write anything. We only know it through mainly Plato. And there are certain dialogues from Plato that historians think that, yeah, this is probably something that Socrates actually said. And one of those things that really clicked with me and really opened my mind to the learning process in general was an oracle, according to Plato's account, told Socrates once that the god she was the oracle for, whatever god that was, said that Socrates is the wisest of men. Like, he's wiser than any other man. And Socrates was perplexed by this because he asked, well, how can I be wisest among men? Because I don't know anything. And that was one of the big kind of characteristics of Socrates and Plato's dialogues. He was always seeking to learn more from others. And well, in the story, Socrates comes to the conclusion that, I'm the wisest among men because I know that I know nothing. Which initially may sound a little ridiculous. Like, what do you mean you don't know anything? What do you mean you know nothing? Surely you must know something. But what the phrase really means is that he realizes the limits of his own knowledge, and that there's always somebody who might know more than him. So, Plato characterizes this in his dialogues because he's always getting into philosophical debates with some other, like usually a sophist or something, who were essentially like a relativist. He said there really is no truth, or the truth doesn't really matter. Was more centered around like rhetoric, their teachings, than actual philosophy. Well, and so true wisdom, according to Socrates and Plato, lies in the acknowledgement that I don't know anything. There might be somebody who knows something or might have an insight that I don't. And that leads to a certain kind of academic humility, that realizing that I don't really know anything. And especially for the more educated individuals who might watch this, probably won't be too many, but you realize that the more you learn about the world or about a certain topic, the more you realize just how little you actually know. Because you see where we lack in knowing something. You're better able to perceive that. And it leads to asking questions, or like questions such as, well, they say this thing, but why? And I've found that I've gone and done that a lot more ever since then. Especially with like scientific questions, with the big uh, event that happened in 2020. I wasn't a denier or anything, but I was always questioning, like, well, how do we know this? or, well, the statistics say this, but do they really? Because statistics can be unreliable too and easily manipulated. Things like that, but that's a different topic. But a better one might be like with climate change. It was something I did once, particularly the prehistory of climate change, because there are theories based on actual hard evidence that shows climate changes throughout the ancient past, pre-humans even, and like back to near the beginning of the world, beginning of Earth. And then a geologist can tell this through different means like rock sedimentary bases, uh, little air bubbles that were trapped in like ice caps and things like that. They can get a sense of what the atmosphere was like, and from there build a a, uh, a projection of what the climate probably was like, and they can track it through some means. Like that. So I just asked the questions. Like I didn't doubt that aspect. Was like, how can we really know how much, or how much the climate actually like changes over time, like over a shorter period compared to uh back then? Because the way I viewed it was that we're only getting particular points of data, as opposed like over large swaths of periods, as opposed to the past like 100 years or so, where we've kept a lot more track of that, a lot more, the weather fluctuations and things like that. So I perceived it as being a little bit different. I think I understand a bit better now, but I still don't quite get it. That's outside of my specialty, but I have a better understanding. And the reason I questioned it was just because I wanted to learn more. One way to learn is to question why the things work they do the way they do. So that way you can get a better understanding of the concepts behind them and the principles, which is important for philosophy. Philosophy is about questioning the nature of the world, not in the sense that you necessarily doubt it, like the Matrix, like a lot of people like to put out these days, but rather like, why is reality the way it is? Why is mankind the way we are? It's questions like that. And it's really, I don't want to say enlightened me, but it made me think a lot more deeply about human nature and about the nature of the world in general. Uh, One of the things, sorry, I'm adjusting my helmet. One of these things was like, it's just an observation I made with maturity, in that we never really stop maturing. We never really stop learning more about the world. And a lot of that comes through experience. For example, think of like a very young toddler. The toddler doesn't really know that he can't have everything he wants all the time. So he demands it. And he gets upset when he doesn't get what he wants when he wants it. Now, me, obviously, as an adult, teenagers and kids who are older, realize that that's not really how things work. You can't always get what you want all the time when you want them, nor would you want that. Because sometimes we have a desire for something or an impulse for something that would be bad for us. And we need to know how to say no to that, or how to put that desire off. But as the kid learns more, particularly from his family, he he realizes that, and he comes to have a better understanding of himself and of the world. Well, now me, in my some odd 20s, later 20s and now beginning to see better too about like the nature of human interaction, people. Like I'm more conscious of my own learning in that now. You start that a lot more when you're like in high school. You begin learning how to do social interactions. But as an adult, when you talk to a teenager about, social interactions, they don't really get it, especially in the dating world. Guys always think girls are gonna like this abstract thing, usually something like cars or something like that. A car with big wheels or some weird thing like that. When they're that's not really true. But also the way in which people just tend to behave too, and that also comes from experience. Now, Aristotle, going a bit back to philosophy, makes an interesting observation. He says that he makes a distinction between experience and like having knowledge of the theory. To him, having knowledge of the theory is somewhat better, is better than just having mere experience, because the one who has a theory understands why something works, while those with mere experience just simply know that it works. He uses medicine, which, of course, back in his day was different, but still is applicable today, uh, because, you can see the symptoms of something, but unless you really have experience with it, it's hard to diagnose it, because a lot of things can have similar symptoms, particularly the mental health field these days. It could be like when you know or see kind of the characteristics of someone who's like really schizophrenic, delusional. There's a certain air or look about them that is very subtle, that you other people won't have, and you can't fake it. But that comes from experience. Theory is that you can know what those symptoms are, and you can know why they manifest, but you don't really. It's not as obvious. So ideally, you have both the theory and the experience, because so that way you know what works, why it works, and you can better go to treat the patient. So, but he says those who know the why are the ones we call wise, because they're able to explain the nature of the world. And he applies this to philosophers who say that you those who know why are able to explain the nature of the universe, are called wise, because they are able to really give us the explanation of why a thing is the way it is. So, but like I said, this is a video journal. I felt like doing another one. Wasn't quite really sure what to do it on. I thought I'd give my little tidbit on philosophy and just ramble on about that a little bit. This is really more like a vlog sort of deal, personal journal. I just felt like talking about it, I guess. It's part of what helps me relax. I'm trying to work this out as a hobby. So, anyway, thank you all for watching, and I guess I'll see y'all next time if I keep this up. I think I will. Maybe like once a week or something. We'll see. Well, thank y'all for watching, and I hope y'all found this, at least my ramblings, a little interesting, not entertaining. But anyway, thank y'all. Bye bye.